Congratulations, you have covered the four basic noun cases: the nominative, the subject case, the accusative, the case of the direct object, and those two cases, the nominative and accusative, are the most structural. And then the two cases that fill in that structure. The genitive provides a qualification or some kind of a limitation of the head noun that it's modifying, and then the dative, a connection of some kind. So the genitive restricts, the dative connects, and you have then the four cases, the four basic cases of the noun system. There's one more to go we'll look at here shortly, but if you have those down, we are along the way. Now on to prepositions and the verb of being, a me. Prepositions are words that qualify and point direction, often used spatially within a sentence, but can be used in a number of concepts. In a me, the verb of being, am, is, and so forth. And we'll look at those here. Let's pray as we begin. Lord, strengthen students this week. Help them to comprehend how the noun cases work and function in a sentence to communicate ideas, and help them with prepositions to understand the spatial orientation, but also the metaphorical and the way that prepositions are nuanced, and the verb of being as well here. Give them strength of vocab. Help them memorize. We ask in Christ's name, amen. Let's think for a few moments about prepositions. Prepositions are words that show relationships between other words. The word that follows the preposition is the object of the preposition, and the whole prepositional phrase, so the preposition itself plus the object of the preposition, is the prepositional phrase. Now, we have thought so far about this word inflected, and inflected means changes, yes, and those changes often occur at the end of a word, right over here. Well, prepositions are not inflected, but there is a change in meaning, and that change is dependent upon the case of the object. So the case of the object of the preposition is what helps us to understand meaning. So dia, for instance, can mean through if the genitive case is involved, but dia can also mean on account of or because with the accusative case. So keep those two ideas in mind. With dia, but the principle is that the preposition, its meaning is dependent upon the case of its object. In the next few slides, I'm going to present here the prepositions as vocab to be memorized. Now, Mounts presents a general diagram of these prepositions on page 75 under the vocab list, and I'm going to present them here with a mnemonic that might be helpful, and I'm going to present them in the order of frequency with which they occur in the New Testament. N is the most frequently occurring preposition in the Greek New Testament, occurs over 2,700 times in the New Testament, and it's always with the dative case, which helps us. It's always with the dative, and it means N. And our mnemonic here, dative Dave. Dative Dave always has his hand in the cookie jar. So right here's your mnemonic. His hand is in the cookie jar. It's in there. It's in that sphere or space. That's N. We think about ace. Ace, the second most frequently occurring preposition in the New Testament, to or into. And it again with the accusative case. N with the dative, ace with the accusative case. The accusative is the object of ace. The mnemonic here, you can see, we have Aaron, and he would be accused of being an ace if he had enough cookies for his friends. Ek means out of or from, and it occurs with the genitive. Are you seeing here that these prepositions occur with one, or perhaps we'll see in a moment, more than one case, but that case is going to help us identify the meaning of the preposition itself. Ek, out of. Here we have Jenny, genitive, and she wrecks her nails when she's taking the cookie out of the cookie jar. You're seeing the cookie jar theme here along the way. Again, the more creative, the sillier, likely the more easily you'll remember these ideas. If you want to come up with your own, that's great. Use your own schematic and mnemonics, and that will be helpful for you. We'll continue on with this cookie jar saga for now. Pros occurs with the accusative. It means to, toward. Similar to ace, as we saw earlier, but ace means into, to, but often with a shade of into. Pros is just towards, but notice there's a spatial separation here. This line is not going into, it has stopped beforehand. And Aaron, the accusative Aaron, here Aaron is sometimes accused of pressing his hand towards the cookie jar. He plans to take one, but he's just moving toward it. Dia with the accusative means on account of or because. And here again, just as I noted earlier, dia can occur with the accusative and with the genitive. And notice the distinction between the two. Dia with the accusative, on account of or because of. So we have Aaron accusative. Aaron is accused of taking the cookie jar because of Diana, or on account of her. Jenny, genitive, on the other hand here, she takes the cookie jar through Diana, that is with her help. She's the agency. She's the agent that helps. So it's through her and on account of. Dia with the accusative, on account of or because, with the genitive through. Apa means away from, and it occurs with the genitive as well. And the mnemonic, again, Jenny genitive uses her paw to take the cookie out of the cookie jar, or away from it, taking it away from the cookie jar. Again here, meta, similar to dia, can be with the genitive or the accusative. If we're thinking about genitive, remember our mnemonic here, Jenny. She meets with her friends at the cookie jar. So it's the idea of with. And I just have two circles here to represent a spatial designation of with. And with the accusative, after. So we have a sense of these two circles together, with, but this circle is after. Here's the first circle, and here's the second. Hupa, you can see the same scenario is continuing on. Hupa with the genitive here means by, and it's right beside, and then under with the accusative. Para, very flexible. Para can be with the genitive that we've seen, also with the dative and the accusative. Can mean from, very similar to ek with the genitive. Dative, beside, very similar to para, and then with the accusative alongside of, and you can see how similar those two cases are with para. And this leads us to a principle with prepositions. There's a good bit of overlap, and context that surrounds the prepositional phrase is going to help us to understand its meaning. Let's think for a moment about Greek subjects and verbs as we're thinking about inflection patterns again, and it's the end of a word that's important. So if I have a word that has 5 letters here. It's toward the end of a word that I'm going to look to identify person and number. When we think about person, we think about first, second, or third person. In the singular, I. Here in the plural, we. And then you, y'all, he, she, it, and them. And the number, singular or plural, is identified again by the end of a word. The subject, therefore, is identified as a part of the verb. You don't need in Greek to have a separate subject listed. It's always included in the verb. Now the subject, what case is that again? If you remember, yes, it's the nominative case that will be the subject. So the nominative, again, is our subject case. But that subject, that nominative, doesn't need to be there because it's included in the verb. And gender is sometimes identified by the context of the verb, but obviously if there is a subject explicit, if there is a nominative case, then that noun can only be one gender, and that's where we'll find the gender in that nominative. So this brings us to me, and we think about this verb me, the verb of being, the most frequently occurring verb in Greek, as in most languages, I think all. The verb of being is going to be the most frequently occurring. 8.12, page 72 in Mounts. If you have the textbook open, look at page 72, and here we have it. This will just need to be memorized. Me is the first person singular. I am, you are. Estin, that's the lexical, or rather the most frequently occurring, the third person. Me is your lexical form. Right here, me, that's going to be your lexical form. But Estin, the third singular, is just the most frequently occurring. He, she, or it. And then Esmen, we are. Este, you are. Asen, they are. Let's work on the workbook and translation practice in exercise 8 for a couple of moments, and some principles that I want to set out. And Mounts notes these in chapter 8. First, break the sentence into units. Such a key idea. Don't be overwhelmed. Think of units. And as you progress now with translation, I want to work through just a process here for you on the slide for a few moments to break the sentence into units. So if we say break it into units, what unit do you look for first? Well, look for the verb first. That's what I suggest, that you look for the verb. And here, our verb estin that we just noticed, again, on page 72, 8.12, the verb of being, third singular. He, she, it is. Estin here, third singular, so he, she, it is. We find the verb, and then we look and see, is there a nominative case outside of the verb that could be the subject? And we have it right over here, God. God is the subject of that verb. God is, and now we have this predicate nominative right here. God is love, and it's a predicate nominative. The predicate nominative, extremely important, and I note it right here. The predicate nominative is going to come up and be important because there'll be multiple nominatives around one verb, and we have to make a decision which nominative is going to be the subject. And again, here we have multiple nominatives, ha theos and agape. So which is going to be the subject of this verb estin? Well, there's a pecking order, if you will, and that pecking order is listed, again, right here. Here's our pecking order. Number 1, a pronoun. 2, articular noun. 3rd, proper name. So if I have a pronoun, even if I have an articular noun or a proper name, the pronoun is going to be the subject. If there's no pronoun, I look for an articular noun and then a proper name, and you can see that pattern playing out here. We have ha theos, there's our definite article, but we do not have a definite article here. So the articular noun wins. And here the articular noun, ha theos, is the subject of estin right there. Again, that's the way you would break up the sentence into units, and then you put those units together. So we find the verb, just as we have done here, and then we find the subject of that verb, and then we begin to work through the sentence from there. Let's go on to this second clause here for a moment. Here's our second clause. What's our first step? Yes, we find the verb, and here our verb is mene, and our subject, ha menon. You can see how important that definite article is here for that recognition of the nominative. The one remaining, it's here, the one remaining in love, he remains in God, and God remains in him. So we have this repetition of verbs here. In 1 John happens frequently, and then here ha theos is our subject of this second use of mene here. The next phrase down, let's read this. I'm going to just read this slowly and see if you can pause and read the word after me. Ta sabaton, diaton anthropon, egenatakai, ukha anthropos, diata sabaton. Here are verb, egenata, and our nominative. The Sabbath was because of man, and not man, and this verb is brought down, because of the Sabbath. Vocab Starter. Again, the more creative that you can be, the more consistent, the more likely you're going to learn these words. One just question by way of reminder, what does that asterisk mean by chimera? Yes, that's the core of that word, and Mounts lists that root there for us, and that's going to be the base of the word. And in the feminine, that's always going to be the same as the lexical form, again, because in the nominative singular, there is no feminine ending. So those are always going to be equal in the feminine. And you see that same principle carrying here with thalassa and the nominative feminine singular, which is the lexical form. So we have the root with the asterisk, and then the lexical form there as well. Continue on with that vocab, and again, the more consistent you can be and the more creative, the more likely you'll remember them.